You are the mother to this baby that is growing inside you, and you know best, and you need to trust that.
Welcome to the Hey Mama podcast. We're your hosts, Tessa and Shayna. We are sisters, mothers, and doulas, and are passionate about living an intentional life and all things motherhood. This podcast exists to create community as we learn how to delight in motherhood together.
Join us weekly as we chat with women about anything and everything from non-toxic living to women's health to feeding our families and our favorite topic of all, birth. We are so glad you're here.
Well, hello and welcome to the Hey Mama podcast. We are so happy that you are here joining us today. And today we have a very special guest, one of our sweet, sweet mama friends. But before we greet her, Shayna, how was your week?
It was good.
It was good.
It felt like it flew by.
Yeah.
And like we didn't sleep at all. And I think River's sick again. But it was okay. There was nothing really to report.
Okay.
That's yeah.
Okay.
No good recipe. I didn't make sourdough. It's
You
fine.
didn't have time.
I didn't have time.
That's okay.
Yeah. I felt really, really good about myself this morning because I went to the grocery store. Obviously, I go there every day. And then I meal prepped all of my fruits and veggies for River, and that felt really good. She ate about half of the blueberries that I bought for her. But perfect. It was a perfect little afternoon. It feels so good to get those things done. You feel so much more accomplished. So that was good. Yeah, just kind of getting some things in the house ordered.
Awesome.
What about you, girl?
It was a good week. It was my first week on maternity leave. So I ended official work. I'm done with all my births. And yeah, it was good. So it just felt
so fun.
Sage isn't sleeping in. For some reason, it's crazy. He's not sleeping in the mornings.
He's got a lot to do.
Yeah, so
really busy.
That's a bummer because I was going to sleep a lot. But everything else has been just good, a little bit more intentional, just the house and starting to get things in order, not feeling so chaotic, but slowly but surely. So, yeah.
So cool. How many more weeks to your guest date?
Like 2. I'll be 38 in a day. Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
38 weeks. Yeah.
It is flying. I cannot wait.
It is flying for all of us.
Oh my gosh. I know. Especially for you. I feel like the second one, it probably flies double time.
Seriously. To all you moms out there with 4 kids, tell me how you do it. Tell me. Seriously. I got to learn. But
we always say that. We don't know how our mom did it. We're 7. We're like, oh my gosh, I can't get out of the house with 1 on time.
No, we're not.
But anyways, what a great week. So excited. Can't wait to meet this baby.
Me too.
But we are so excited for today's episode. We are chatting with an amazing mama, like Tessa said, just so tender and intentional, and has been just such a gift to get to know her. And we've heard a little bit of her birth story pieces, and it is amazing, y'all, and you're going to love it and learn so much, but we're so excited to dive into that. And Kendall, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, we would love that.
Hi. Well, thank you guys for having me on. I'm so excited. I'm Kendall. I have a 9-month-old daughter, Charlotte. My husband and I both come from really big families, and so we're super excited to have Charlotte and hopefully many more kids.
Love it. And we love Charlotte, and she's just a little dumpling.
She is so beautiful. I can't believe she's 9 months. I know we were talking before we hit record, but oh my gosh.
Yeah, we feel like we've seen her grow up before our eyes a little bit.
She really has.
It's so cool.
She really has. Well, Kendall.
Yes.
Thank you for being on. We're really excited you're here. And we know that you have a lot of sister-in-laws, and they have all gone more alternative routes with their births. And we know you went more of a traditional route. So would you mind kind of telling us why you decided to go that way and a little bit about your pregnancy?
Yeah. So my husband has 3 sisters. They all have done home births, birth center births, and hospital births. So they've all kind of done it all. And then my mom had 4 hospital births, and that's just what I kind of grew up around. And so when I met my husband, Tim, home births and birth center births, that was like the first that I'd ever really heard of it. And so I always just assumed like I was going to give birth in a hospital, and I really liked my OB. And so that's just kind of what we decided for Charlotte. I think we'll do things differently moving forward. But it had pros and cons. It was a good experience, but there were also definitely some things that I would have changed.
Thank you for sharing that. And Kendall, do you feel like with pregnancy, I don't know, again, you probably read books and watched things as well, but how did you prepare for pregnancy and labor just in general? Like what were your go-to tools?
So I took the Built to Birth class. I found her on Instagram and loved all the things that she would post about. And so I was probably in like the 2nd trimester when I started it. I even had Tim, my husband, kind of listen to a few videos with me. But I will say I don't think I was like as intentional about watching the videos and listening. Because looking back, I'm like, I really could have done so much more with it. And she had so many really great resources that I didn't even really dive into. And so I think I probably could have done more, and I didn't do as much as I should have. But that's okay.
Yeah, it is okay. And you already had that baby and you're good, but we love Built to Birth.
Yeah, Bridget's amazing.
Yeah. All her.
Good.
She's great.
Do you feel like there was anything that you focused? Do you feel like there's anything that you focused on just within like, okay, exercise? Did you change your exercise? Did you change how you're eating anything? Did you change like anything like that within lifestyle, or did you kind of keep on with the same?
Yeah, so I grew up playing sports. I played soccer in college, and so I've always been super active, and I've always loved working out. I think the hardest thing for me was I love to run, and I just wasn't comfortable running while I was pregnant. And so I did kind of have to change my mode of exercise. So I tried yoga, I tried Pilates, I tried different activities and exercises like that. But that was hard for me because I couldn't, go as hard as I was used to, So that was probably one of the bigger challenges because I did struggle with like my body image, which sounds so ridiculous, but when you grow up looking a certain way and feeling a certain way, and then all of a sudden, like your body is just rapidly growing and changing, and you can't do anything about it, right? It's beautiful, but you're like looking at yourself in the mirror thinking like, holy cow, I'm huge, and I just went on a run,
Yeah.
But it's all for obviously a great reason. But that was definitely something that I struggled with. So I tried to maintain that exercise. Obviously towards the end, it was just more like walking and just being outside as much as I could.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. And that's a really like difficult aspect. And yeah, pregnancy is beautiful and wonderful. But I at least know for me, like I didn't look actually pregnant until I was about 6 months, 7 months.
Yeah.
And so I just had this, I loved being pregnant, but I just had a very little, just looked like a beer belly kind of. Like it wasn't very round. It wasn't like a distinct looking shape.
Yeah.
And it just kind of felt really awkward. Yeah. And I know we're both tall too, so like carry differently, but I also know it was really similar with you too, of just, and first babies also impact that, never been pregnant before, but I know that was something I struggled with of it's so, you feel kind of foreign in your own body. You look in the mirror and you're like, oh, like Yeah. So it makes perfect sense. Do you feel like exercise was also kind of a way to release things or to kind of let out emotions, or was that kind of like a de-stressor for you?
Yeah, definitely. I am a teacher, and so I taught up until I was like 40 weeks, 39 and a half weeks. And so I was really busy. I was on my feet all day teaching sixth graders, and they are not easy to deal with.
Wow.
And so I would come home, and this was towards like the end of my pregnancy. I would just go on walks with my husband, and he would make fun of me because I would actually like try and run, but I just looked like an awkward waddle. And so, yeah, I would go in the pool a lot because it was hot and that felt really good on my back. So just anything that got me outside and able to just kind of relax was super, super helpful.
Okay, so we really want to hear a little bit more about your birth, hear your birth story, and just kind of that overall, like, how did you know this was it? I'm about to give birth. I'm about to meet my baby. How did that unfold for you?
Yeah, so I'd say the most exciting part was we did not know what we were having. So whether or not she was a boy or a girl was a surprise, and that was something that both of us were really, really looking forward to. Tim and I kind of wrote up this general birth plan that we had, obviously aware that things could change and we had to adapt to that. But we had done a lot of research, and we did feel prepared for what we wanted. So I hit 40 weeks, and my OB wanted me to go in for a non-stress test. So we go into the hospital. I think I was like 40 weeks and 3 days. We go into the hospital, and they hook me up to the fetal monitoring. Tim's not in there with me because of COVID protocol. My OB is out of town. And so the nurse comes in after I've been hooked up for like 20 minutes, and she says, "We need to induce you. Your baby's heart rate is slightly dropping with every contraction that you're having." And so I am just shocked. Like, first of all, I'm not even feeling contractions. Second of all, being induced is not part of our plan at all. My husband's not in here with me, and my OB is out of town. Like, we're not doing this.
Yeah.
So the nurse is like, "Well, we need to call the OB on call and have her read the chart, whatever it is, and see what she has to say." So I never actually met the OB. She just talks to me on the phone. And she said, "You're having really small contractions, and your baby's heart rate is slightly dropping with each contraction that you're having. So we're going to admit you, and we are going to induce you." They say, "We are going to start you on Cytotec and eventually Pitocin." So right away, we're freaking out because I wasn't dilated, my body wasn't ready, and this is not what we had envisioned. So we start kind of doing our own research. Like, why would baby's heart rate be dropping? Is this normal? We asked a couple of the nurses. I remember calling my mom. We called my sister-in-law. So we were just asking everybody. And what we had found was that baby was probably having something called variable decelerations, which is normal. And we stayed and watched the monitor for a couple of hours. We had an ultrasound done just to check amniotic fluid. And everything was good. Baby's heart rate wasn't dropping past like 110. It was staying within a 140 to 110 range. And so we knew baby was okay. And the OB called, and she just asked, how I was feeling. And I said, "I think we're going to go home." And she just about dropped her jaw to the floor and said, "You can't go home. Your baby could die." And to have a doctor say that to you is very traumatizing. So Tim and I talked, and it was hard, but we said, you know what? I am comfortable leaving. My body is not ready. I feel my baby moving constantly. I know that variable decelerations are normal. I want to go home. I'm not ready to have this baby. So we signed an AMA and we went home.
Wow. Wow. How did you have like the strength to, first of all, to hear a doctor tell you that your baby could die, and then to go forward with your own intuition and with your own gut feeling of being like, actually, I know my baby's okay, and we're going to step out of here. Like, how did you guys do that? Because in the moment, that seems so big and very overwhelming.
Yeah, it was very overwhelming, and we did not sleep that night. Like, we were just very, you know, did we make the right decision? Did we make the right decision? Should we have stayed, you know? But I think the biggest thing for me was my OB wasn't there. No doctor came and physically saw me. She just talked to me on the phone. One of the nurses even said, like, I think you're okay, you know? So I think even when you're pregnant, before you have your first baby, you have this mama intuition, this mama instinct. And that was really strong. And I remember my mom saying, you know, you are just another number to them. And it doesn't mean that they don't care about you. They do. But this is your baby, and you know more than they do right now. Like, you have that feeling, you should go home, because being there, you're already so stressed. You are so tense. Your body is not going to open up, and it's not going to be a good birth experience if you choose to stay. So it was hard, but it all worked out. Thank God.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you feel like there was a moment in time, especially like when you and Tim were just talking, you two, do you feel like there was a moment that kind of solidified, like, okay, you know what, we're okay to do this. This is how we are going to make this decision to go home. Was there something that was like a tipping point, or it's like an affirmation that really gave you a go ahead, or was it just an accumulation, do you feel like?
I think, so we had stayed in the hospital with the heart rate monitor hooked up to me for a couple of hours. And there was one point where Tim looked at me and he was just like, I know I'm not a doctor, but I can read this chart and I can see when you're having a contraction, and I can see how far our baby's heart rate is dropping. And it's not anything concerning. Like, it's not something that seems abnormal, right? We're looking online, we're calling his sister, we're talking to my aunt who's a nurse, we're talking to all of these people. And the nurse said to him, you're not trained to read this. And I'm laying in the bed, and Tim's like, well, I respect you, but it's not that hard. And I was like, oh, okay, go off. And so after that, I was like, you know what? He feels good. I feel good. Let's get out of here.
Yeah. That's great that you were both on the same page, instead of one person like kind of having to convince the other person or anything. That like you guys are both on the same page. Like, we know our baby's okay. We have this sound wisdom and guidance from other people outside of ourselves. And because within yourselves, that would have been great enough alone, but you had that extra comfort in your mom and your aunt and your sister-in-law. So that's beautiful. Yeah. So how did the rest of your birth go, girl?
Yeah, I know we haven't even gotten there. So that non-stress test was at like 40 and 3. And then I ended up having Charlotte at 41 weeks. So my water broke at 4:30 in the morning. And again, like adapting to change, right? I wanted to start having contractions and labor that way and then have my water break and 30 minutes later pop my baby out, you know? So didn't happen that way. But so my water breaks 4:30. I stayed home until about 2:30 that afternoon, just kind of laboring through contractions. I wanted to stay home as long as I could. Looking back, I should have stayed home a lot longer than I did, but your first time, you have no idea what to expect, right? I had no idea. My contractions were every like 3 to 4 minutes when I was at home, and they were not unbearable by any means, but they were tough. And I had always heard, like, once your contractions are this many minutes apart, you should come in. So I'm like, all right, time to go, you know? So we get to the hospital. Again, Tim's not allowed inside with me, so they bring me into triage alone, which was kind of daunting. And the first thing that they told me was, we're not actually sure if you know that it was your water breaking. So we're going to have to run some tests. And I was like, no, I know it was my water. Like, I didn't pee my pants. And it was everything that I expected it to be, right? It was this gush of water. So I just kind of felt like they didn't trust me from the beginning. And that was really hard because I kept saying, it was my water. I don't want to be checked, you know, this and that. And they were just kind of going about their own schedule. So eventually they bring Tim in. I was only like 2 centimeters. And I would say by like 5:30 or 6 that night, so now my water had been broken for 12 hours, my contractions were unreal. Like I should have stayed at home until my contractions got to this point, right? And that was really hard. Tim was so great. He was so helpful. He was so supportive. He truly did everything he possibly could to help me through those contractions. But it was hard for him too because, you know, he's giving me counter pressure on my hips. He's helping me try and move around. But the nurses gave me, you know, a 2x2 box that I could walk around in because they wanted me hooked up to an IV. So I wasn't given much room to move. And again, that was part of our birth plan. I wanted to be able to move around freely. So he was doing the best he could. I was doing the best I could. All while you have nurses and doctors and hospital staff coming in and out of our room so fluidly, not really offering much support or encouragement or motivation. It was just like, hey, you're making a lot of noise in here. Let us know if you want the epidural. And like, I'm sweating, Tim's sweating, I'm screaming. Like, it was rough. So around 7 that night, I got an epidural. And they said, you should feel relief in about 15 minutes. So 15 minutes goes by, 30 minutes goes by, an hour goes by. I'm like, I am still feeling everything. And now you're telling me I can't move. So I'm laying in this bed, not able to move. Still feeling all of the contractions. So they were just like, oh, that's so weird. Keep hitting the button. Keep hitting the button, right? And I'd say after about 2 hours, I felt some relief. Not much, but some, where I was able to just kind of like to rest. And that lasted about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then it picked right back up again. And the nurses kept coming in like, what do you mean? It's not working. What do you mean? You're still feeling things. And I'm like, I have no idea, but something's wrong. Something is wrong. Something's not working. And I'm really struggling. So I remember asking for food. I remember asking for, water and ice chips and popsicles, and they wouldn't give me anything. Tim was giving me coconut water and stuff that we brought, but they wouldn't let me have any food. And so that was hard. I was rotating positions using a peanut ball, laying on the bed, but same thing. Like I was just really kind of breathing through these contractions. The following morning, so now it's been about 24 hours since my water broke. They come in and they said, we're going to take the epidural out and we're going to try and put it back in. I said, okay. The anesthesiologist comes in and he's like, wow, whoever did this really missed. And that's not what you want to hear as a first-time mom going through this experience. So he tries it again. Same thing, same story. You'll feel relief in 15 minutes. 15, 30 minutes, an hour goes by, nothing. So we're kind of at the point where we're just like, you know what? We just need to ditch this idea and get this baby out as safely as possible, right? I didn't want to be put on Pitocin. I didn't want any other interventions. I already had felt I was being poked and prodded enough, and I just wanted no more. And so I'd say around like 9:30 that morning, the nurse in there said, let us know when you start to feel some pressure. Again, looking back, the pressure that I had first felt was nothing like the pressure that you feel when that baby is really right there. So I start pushing. I am up on my knees, holding on to Tim's shoulders. And that really helped. And that was something that I kind of had to fight for because they kept telling me, no, you're pushing on your back. You have to push on your back. And I was just like, heck no, I need to get up. So I pushed for about 2 hours. My OB came in and I just remember at that point I was laying down and I just remember thinking like, I cannot do this anymore. I am at my breaking point. I need to tap out. And my doctor looked at me and he just said, if you give me like 2 pushes, your baby will be here. And I was like, okay, let's do this. Let's bring this baby home. And 2 pushes later, I felt her head come out and then felt her little body wiggle out. And I heard my doctor say, it's a girl. And it was just like the coolest moment. I mean, I could cry right now. It was the coolest moment of my life. And they laid her on my chest. And then it's just like the last 31 hours, I don't even remember. And I do it all over again.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it was wild.
Wow.
Sweet.
It is a wild story.
I would say your story is one of those that, before you even got to the point of labor and birth, you already had to overcome so many obstacles, and just so cool just hearing it through all together this time around, just seeing kind of that consistency with you of like, okay, resilience, but also trusting your gut and like almost that formation of like, like the mother being born inside of you as you had to like choose risk, right? As you had to choose, maybe the alternative option that wasn't what they were advising. You had to go against doctors and you had to go against nurses. And then the whole time, even there, you're trying to go about it that way with getting an epidural and it doesn't work. And it's just over and over and over. It keeps hitting you of like, okay, and you're finding a different way. So it's just so cool to see like, because then it's now just carried over to who you are today. But just such a beautiful thing of like, just awakening, like, okay, trusting the instinct, trusting yourself and trusting each other, you and your husband within this journey.
Yeah.
And then again, like trusting Charlotte that she knows how to come on out.
Yeah. And so encouraging that that your OB was that person that was like that final, like, Kendall, like, come back to earth, look at me, give me 2 more pushes, let your body give you 2 more pushes, and we'll meet your baby. Because in those moments, we need encouragement, especially since you only had Tim. You don't have a doula. You didn't have someone else to be that extra support to you. So having someone else come in, and I am so thankful that he did that for you, because if no one else had, you know, like, who knows where your story would have been. It would have been beautiful and wonderful. But because when we get discouraged, and we're kind of starting to fight our body instead of releasing and embracing and letting those waves rush over us and moving with it. So you are so strong. You're so courageous, because seriously though, like, what you went through, it's a lot and it's exhausting. Just that mental load alone is so tiring. Then to put on top of that you are giving birth. Like, that is exhausting in and of itself. So then that on top of that mental load. And I think it's so beautiful. And the maiden dies and the mother is born. And in that process, it is hard and it's rough and it's beautiful and it's wonderful, but it's excruciating. But you did it all, and it's so beautiful. And you're the most amazing mama. And it's so cool. So amazing.
Well, thank you. It was really incredible, obviously, but it was so exhausting and overwhelming. And just the process of giving birth in itself is a whole experience that you really can't prepare for. And then being in a hospital with all these curveballs kind of thrown at you, it's like you just almost like lose yourself in that. And I love my OB, but he wasn't there for my labor, and he wasn't there for my labor, right? He was there for the last 10 minutes, and I really needed him. And thank God he was there, because at that point I was exhausted. Tim was exhausted. Tim had done every possible thing he could to support me, but it takes a lot out on the dads as well, And so I think having that support and that encouragement throughout your labor and delivery, it would have made a huge difference in somebody outside of your husband, right? Like a doula. Because you need that. You both need that.
Well, thank you for sharing all of that. It's been just so cool to hear it all just kind of unfold. But how now do you kind of feel like your postpartum journey has been, since now you are 9 months out, sweet Charlotte? How has it been? Is there some key things that have stood out to you at this point?
So postpartum, similarly to birth, I think, is something I could not prepare for. Or you think it's going to go one way and it goes a completely different way. And so I got that golden hour with her. She stayed with me. She did not leave my chest. And that was beautiful. And the connection that I felt with her right away has not left. I mean, she is the light of my life. But I really struggled with postpartum anxiety, and to an extent I still do. And it was just with everything. Like the first couple of months, I didn't want to leave my house because I was nervous that she was going to start crying wherever we went, and that was going to bother whoever I was around, right? Or nursing in public was something that I was just nervous about, and I didn't want her to be crying and not be able to latch. And we had a really great breastfeeding experience, and so I was very fortunate in that sense. But just all these things that made me nervous that I didn't really expect to feel nervous about. I generally am a pretty mellow person, and now all of a sudden I am just like on edge with everything. And so that was hard. That was really hard. And to an extent, it's still something that I struggle with today. But I think talking about it and talking to my husband really, really helped, because it was probably like 3 or 4 weeks after we came home with her. And I was having all of these intrusive thoughts, right? Like walking up the stairs. What if I trip and fall and crush my baby? Or what if I'm changing her diaper and the ceiling fan falls from the ceiling? Like crazy, crazy, terrible thoughts. And I just remember crying to Tim. And I was like, you're probably going to think I'm crazy. And he looked me dead in the eyes and he said, babe, I have been feeling those same things. And I think things very similar to that. And I was shocked. I was like, what do you mean? Like, you didn't just give birth. You're not having all these crazy hormones, you know, in and out of your body. But to know that dads still feel that and husbands still feel that, it was so almost empowering, almost like, okay, you know what? We are really in this together. And he has truly, truly been my rock. I think on another note, like I remember coming home and taking a shower for the first time. And yeah, I'm talking about you. Taking a shower for the first time and just breaking down and sobbing. And he comes in and he's like, what's wrong? Like, what is wrong? And I said, I cannot believe how hard I was on my body. My body just grew and birthed this beautiful, almost 8-pound baby. And for so long, I was complaining about how I was gaining weight and my legs looked different and I had cellulite and I was losing my butt and like all these superficial things that I think just really come into perspective after you have a baby and you have so much more appreciation for yourself as a woman. We are so divinely made and intricately built that it just really, really put a lot in perspective, and I'm so grateful for that. And anytime I am feeling anxious or I am feeling nervous, I think, you know, God chose me to be a mom at this time, and there's a reason for that. And so I really try and hold on to knowing that.
That's awesome. That's beautiful. I love that you just brought awareness to what anxiety can look like and what intrusive thoughts can look like, because that's something that is never talked about. And Shane and I both have experienced that ourselves. I know we've been able to share that a little bit together as friends, but it's just so cool to just talk about that and bring awareness to other moms who, like, you are not alone if you've had those thoughts, if you've had even crazier thoughts than that, but truly knowing like this is a season and that season will pass. And it's probably something we all say to each other a lot recently, right? Like, this is a season and it will pass and it does get better. But so cool that within your story, Tim's always been that person for you. And it's just so neat that he gets to be your husband, you get to be his wife, and you guys get to love each other that way. But again, you shared that common like fear, right? And of course, it seems like this unsaid fear of like, oh, no one has these thoughts, right? These are, but absolutely he did. So neat. I love that.
Yeah, and just like speak it out. So you spoke it to your husband. If you are someone that's listening and you have those thoughts, you talk to someone. That's not something to keep in just because it might be, you know, something that more women experience than you might have realized. That doesn't mean you're supposed to walk alone in it and just grin and bear it. Like, that's not, postpartum anxiety is very, very real, and you need to talk to someone about it. It could be a therapist. It could be a trusted friend, a trusted mama friend, your husband, someone, you know, like you need to voice it, because anxiety seems a lot bigger in the dark. And when, you know, you're just stuffing like, no one else feels like this, I'm just going to stuff it. When you realize that more people do feel like that, but also that you're not alone. And then also that you need to talk to someone. So don't just, you know, hear that and be like, okay, it's like they like, you know, said it to one person and they're still walking through it and they're fine. But no, we've told our stories. We've talked about it. We've processed it. I know I process with my husband and then close friends and some practitioners that I trust. So speak it out and talk to someone that's trusted in your environment, in your circle, or then a therapist. That's just my PSA.
And I think one of the biggest saving graces was a month. She was exactly a month old. She was born June 15th, and on July 15th, I left the house by myself with her for the very first time and went to this mama group where I met you two beautiful mothers, and I met so many other moms, and this group was incredible. It was everything I needed and so much more. And I am forever grateful to both of you because you gave myself and so many other moms a space to talk and cry and learn and grow. And honestly, I think most of my confidence has come from being around you guys and the other moms in our group. And it was so beautiful. I wish we could go to that group every single day of my life because it was so helpful. It was so empowering. And I mean, just little things too. Like, hey, you guys, I'm going to Trader Joe's alone today and I need some encouragement. And I got that. I got that from you guys. And I just want you to know how grateful I am because it was such a beautiful season of life, and it still is. I have you guys, and I have those moms in my corner and in my text messaging inbox every single day of my life, and it's so helpful. It's so amazing.
Wow. Well, thank you. That's a very, very high compliment, and that's a huge honor. So thank you, the other moms in that group.
But it's all it was is what our heart is and what everyone's heart is, right? In this kind of mama community is just to build community and to have a village. And that's all we wanted to facilitate, and so thankful to the person for allowing us to do that, right?
Yeah.
But it was just that. It was that you weren't alone and you could say your crazy thought or ask a recommendation or ask for help in this. And that's all we need, right? That's so important in motherhood. So that's what it was. You found your village. You found your people.
Yep.
100%. 100%.
I love it. I love it.
I love it.
I love it.
Absolutely. Oh, we love you.
Thank you. So we love seeing you every week. It was such a fun treat.
I know.
But as we're closing it up, and thank you again for sharing your story. You're just so strong. I keep saying it, but you really are. You're really amazing. You're an amazing mom to your sweet little girl. But what would be an encouragement to a mom, maybe who is walking into a similar situation of they just had that non-stress test and the doctor's telling them something, or they're feeling a little bit of pressure to be induced? What would be an encouragement, something that would have encouraged you in that moment to hear?
I think a couple of things. The first would be you are the mother to this baby that is growing inside of you, and you know best, and you need to trust that. Because like I said earlier, as soon as that baby is, planted in our uterus, we have this gut instinct as a mother, and we know what is best for our babies. And so we need to trust that. And then I would say that you and your husband, your partner, whoever it is that you are going into this with, you are a team. And as long as you're on the same page and you both feel what is right, I think you just go with that. I think the two of you, I just think that you both, know better. And obviously that's not medical advice, right? And not in a medical emergency. But I just think this is your baby, you are the mama, and mama knows best. And you need to trust that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And just as we close to our last final thing would just be to ask you if
Hi, Charlotte.
Charlotte's like, I'll take this one, Mom.
Yeah.
If you had a mother moment of the week, like a little highlight or high of the week that stood out to you with sweet Charlotte.
Oh my goodness. Yes. So many, actually. My favorite is she has recently learned how to play peekaboo. And so she will stand up on our couch or on the coffee table, and she goes down and covers her face, and we say, "Where's Charlotte?" And she pops up and she giggles and laughs, and she just does it over and over and over again. And it is the cutest, most pure, innocent, beautiful. Oh, goodness gracious. So yeah, Charlotte learning to play peekaboo. The highlight of my week.
So sweet.
So sweet.
I love it.
Oh, well, Kendall, thank you so much. Charlotte, we loved having you on as a guest as well.
Yes, we did.
You gave us a lot of good input. But thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing a little about your postpartum story. Mm-hmm. And we're so happy you were on today. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you both so much. I love you guys.
Thank you.
We love you. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week. Thanks for listening to another episode of Hey Mama. We're so thankful you decided to join us today, and we hope you go forward in your day feeling encouraged and seen.
Here are a few ways you can connect with our community and support the show. The first way is to share the show with a friend via text or Instagram. You can follow and leave a review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And finally, follow us on Instagram at 4MamaBirth.
Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week for another episode.